Thank you. Welcome everyone to the December 2024 City Development Delegated Committee meeting. I declare the meeting open at 6:35 p.m. As per Rule 72.3 of Council's Governance Rules, I wish to advise that I'm attending and chairing this meeting virtually. Councillors, and I might ask the Mayor to confirm this, that you can hear and see me.
All councillors hear and see. Councillor Thomas. Yes, Councillor Thomas, we can see and hear you.
Thanks, great. Thank you, and I can confirm that I can also hear and see the meeting. Maribyrnong City Council acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land, the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung, Boonwurrung and Bunurong peoples of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to ancestors, elders and families who have cared for this land continuously for many thousands of years. I'd also like to acknowledge the treaty process which has started between First Nations peoples and the Victorian Government as an important step in healing and recognising past trauma from colonisation. Just before we start, just also remind everyone to switch phones to silent or to turn them off completely. I'd advise the gallery that the meeting is being recorded and will be available on Council's website. All care is taken to maintain your privacy, however, your presence may be recorded. In accordance with Council's governance rules, meetings may not be photographed, filmed or recorded without the consent of the Chief Executive Officer. I just asked the CEO if we've had any requests.
No requests, Chair.
Thank you. Conflicts of interest. In accordance with the Local Government Act 2020, do any councillors have a conflict of interest in relation to any of the agenda items?
Yes, I do. I have a general conflict of interest for agenda item 6.1 as I submitted an application in as an objection prior to being elected.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Meredith. So we'll ask you to leave when we get to the meeting, when we get to that agenda item. So now move to public question time. Public question time is managed in accordance with Council's governance rules. Members of the public can submit a maximum of 3 questions prior to the commencement of the meeting, and as Chair, I'll decide who answers the questions. Public question time is limited to 15 minutes unless councillors consent to an extension. So we have the first question from Liesl Thomas. Given the considerable investment of time and effort that community members have made in considering and responding to the steel cement proposal being presented tonight, do councillors believe that it is sufficient that the entirety of the objector input appears to have been summarised and presented to council as a total of 109 objections were received? In summary, the grounds of objection primarily relate to air pollution, noise and increased truck traffic. So council, of course, under the Planning and Environment Act is required to consider all objections and submissions that are received in regards to a planning permit application. And of course, council officers have read and considered all those objections and considered the points raised when they've prepared the report. I'd also like to let people in the gallery know that councillors were also provided copies of all of the objections for their information and for reading and preparation for decision making tonight. So yes, there were a large number, and the points have been summarised by the officers at section 6 of the report. I've read all of the submissions. Most of them were fairly brief. There were a couple of larger and more substantial submissions from groups like MTAG, but also from individual residents as well. And I do probably take the point that perhaps we could have treated some of those, perhaps more substantive ones, with a little more, giving them a little more space or airtime within the report. But rest assured, councillors have been provided with all those submissions to have a read through as well. I just ask whether any other councillors wanted to respond to that question at all. No? Okay, I'll move on to the next question. So the next three questions are from Martin Wirt. So the first one, Martin's first question is, are councillors aware that MTAG has suggested that if council was inclined to approve the steel cement application, any permit issued should include conditions relating to trucks, curfews, bans, telematics and Euro V5 standards? So the conditions that MTAG provided in their submission were of course presented at the planning forum. Councillors could attend that if they wished, and questions were responded to on December 3 with the by the permit applicant, and was sent circulated around. But again, councillors were provided with the submission, and it's very clear from your submission, MTAG, that those suggestions were being put to council and the officers for consideration. So question number 2 from Martin. If council decides to support the steel cement proposal, would it be prepared to add the permit conditions proposed by MTAG, including written condition that trucks accessing the site not use Francis Street between Robert Street and Hyde Street once the Westgate Tunnel ramps are open? So on page 31 of the meeting agenda, tonight's meeting agenda, that's explained that yes, once the Westgate Tunnel project is complete, that the proposed truck routes that are provided by the applicant show that trucks won't use Francis Street between Roberts and Hyde Street. So that's a yes. And the final question, do council officers perceive any issues with the wording and enforcement of MTAG's proposed conditions? And I'm going to ask the Director of Planning and Environment to respond to that question.
Thanks, Councillor Thomas, and through you. The suggested conditions have been considered. However, we do perceive some issues as some of these conditions are outside the scope of what can be considered in the context of a planning application.
Thank you very much. And I think I may have, I'm going to that brings public question time to a conclusion, and I did forget to do one thing earlier. Just noting that there are no apologies for this evening's meeting, and also as per Rule 72.3 of Council's governance rules, I wish to advise that Councillor Cook Lamb is also attending this meeting remotely. And Councillor Lamb, can you please confirm that you can hear and see the meeting?
Yes, Councillor Deputy Mayor, I can hear and see you all. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I can confirm that we can see and hear you. Thanks. So we'll move on to agenda item 5.1, which is confirmation of the minutes from 11th of September 2024. And I call for a councillor to move that the minutes of the City Development Delegated Committee meeting held on 11th of September 2024 be confirmed. And apologies, I'm just having trouble seeing, I can see everybody, but I can't see the main room. Right. Sorry, so if I can ask for a councillor to move that the minutes of the City Development Delegated Committee meeting held on 11th September 2024 be confirmed.
Councillor Thomas, yes, thank you. I formally move that the City Development Delegated Committee confirms the minutes of the City Development Delegated Committee meeting held on the 11th of September 2024.
Thanks, councillor, and I call for a councillor to second the motion.
Yep, seconded.
Thanks, councillor Pereira. So I put the motion to the vote. Councillors like to vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We now move on to officer reports. And this is agenda item 6.1, so I just ask Councillor Meredith if you'll leave the meeting while we discuss this report. And the CEO, would you just let me know when Councillor Meredith is out the door? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Meredith is out the door, has left the room.
Great, thank you. So, agenda item 6.1, planning application TP 53/2023-1 at 295 Whitehall Street, Yarraville. The Council has received 4 requests to address the committee on item 6.1. I'd first like to invite Liesl Thomas to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes. And CEO, if you could just let me know when Liesl's ready to begin, that would be great.
Yes. Please come to the microphone. Thank you.
My name is Liesl Thomas and I'm here representing the Maribyrnong Truck Action Group. We are objecting to the steel cement proposal. We're particularly concerned about the additional heavy truck movements to and from the site, including 26-metre B-double trucks. Maribyrnong City Council has already acknowledged that rates of illness and hospitalisation in the municipality due to air pollution are reported to considerably exceed the Australian average. And Council's own website indicates that Council believes this is in part due to the exhaust from heavy trucks. This has led to Council declaring a health emergency in this municipality. The potential for extra jobs at the site is little compensation if this comes at the cost of an increase in diesel particulate emissions from heavy trucks travelling through to and from the site. We are also very worried at the prospect of trucks travelling on local roads with heavy truck bans and truck curfews outside permitted timeframes. Council's own website says that a lack of monitoring and enforcement has undermined the efficacy of heavy truck curfews, and there is already evidence of trucks that are accessing the steel cement site at the moment not doing the right thing and travelling on roads that they shouldn't be travelling on. So not even having a clear condition in a permit to say these are the roads that you are allowed to go on when the ramps are open is blatantly ridiculous if you are in mind to issue a permit. However, we think that issuing a permit for this expansion would make a mockery of the health emergency declaration and would undermine Council's ability to lobby the state government and other parties to take proactive steps to reduce the number of heavy trucks using residential streets in this municipality. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Liesl. So next I'd like to invite Glenn Yates to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Good evening, Glenn Yates, resident of Yarraville, acknowledging councillors and the executives for their time, acknowledging Mayor Tuari also for his additional attention to this particular application, thank you, and also acknowledge the planning team for their help. Steel Cement was granted their first permit in March 2013. During the application process, Council received 0 permit objections. As a result, the permit was issued by the sitting councillors at the time. Compared to 2024, over 100 objections were received. It perplexes me as to why there is such a difference, and would we be having this discussion now if over 100 objections had been received in 2013? As a resident, I'd like to stress the increase of trucks of up to an additional 185 trucks per day, and what that looks like when the 24/7 curfew comes into play. A percentage of those trucks will move east up Whitehall Street, along Footscray Road and onto the City Link, in addition to the fuel tankers which have already been modelled under the Westgate Tunnel project, which excludes steel cement vehicles. This is also as a result of the fact that no eastbound vehicles will have access to the Williamstown Road inbound on-ramp as a result of the 24/7 truck bans when they come into play. The site being prepared for the expansion is heavily contaminated with highly volatile chemical element. Although being capped, I have doubts over its long-term stability with the overall heavy vibration caused by the machinery used to process the byproduct of smeltering. PM 2.5 will increase significantly due to the extra trucks. Although Euro 5 and Euro 6 is on the cards, with the quality of diesel in Australia, it won't make a massive difference. Also noting the additional on-site machinery being used as a result of the footprint of the steel cement being doubled. The increase in PM 2.5 will only exacerbate the terrible air quality that the city of Maribyrnong already suffers. Last year, a health emergency was declared thanks to previous councillors, Councillor Crawford and Councillor Thomas, now Deputy Mayor. The health emergency should be the filter for all current and future industrial planning permits. Without the permit details being available from EPA, I implore the councillors to make the right decision to vote the motion to approve the planning permit for steel cement down. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. I now invite Evangelos Papamichael to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Good evening, councillors. Can you hear me there? Okay, cool. Well, I totally agree, 1,000% what's been said already. We're residents of Frederick Street, and it's not a very nice place to be because there's already huge traffic, a lot of fumes, trying to get on perhaps on the Westgate Bridge in the morning, trucks are banking up from Williamstown Road right up to Stephen Street. I don't even know half of the people that live in the Oval how they get to work. And now we're thinking about also the state government is spending over $10 billion on these tunnels and roads to keep trucks off the road. But this decision will add another 1,300 approximate trucks on the road 24/7. It's hard enough on the weekend to get a bit of peace and quiet, have a cup of coffee and hear the birds singing. All we hear is jingle jangles already coming down the containers from the trucks everywhere. There's no curfews, there's nothing. Totally abuse of everything towards the people that live there. It's totally unfair. I don't know where all of you live. You probably live in nicer maybe areas, less pollution or whatever. It's a bad place to be because you've got authorities around you that are always approving things. Approve this, approve that, approve whatever. And not even thinking about the people's health, people's anything. Dust travels and it's going to travel over our street, it's going to travel into Yarraville, it's going to travel everywhere. So long-term impact, I think it will be devastating. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. And I'd now like to invite Damien Garlick on behalf of the applicant to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Patrick, could you assist with the microphone? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. I'm Damien Garlick. I'm the Executive General Manager of Independent Cement and Lime, who are the owner of Steel Cement and the applicant. Councillors heard much about potential impacts of our development. I'd like to talk about our actual impact, the positive and the measures we're taking to support the community. Steel cement is a recycling business. We provide an environmental benefit. We recycle a byproduct of the steel manufacturing process to create products that eliminate as much as 90% of CO2 emitted during concrete manufacturing. In fact, it should be noted that the cement manufacturing industry contributes about 8% of CO2 emissions worldwide. So replacing that with products that we offer has a significant impact on the reduction of CO2 emissions. Every hour that we operate, 90 tonnes of CO2 are saved from being emitted out into the environment, which makes us quite vital to the Victorian industry or to Victorian industry and infrastructure, which are critically short of green cement products. Increasingly, infrastructure builds require prescribed quantity of green materials. The Metro Tunnel, the Westgate Tunnel, the new Footscray Hospital and many more local and state significant projects have used our sustainable materials. Our application seeks to expand our facility to increase production of these sustainable materials. Importantly, our site is within the industrial zone and the Yarraville core employment area. And the site is strategically located in the port where our new product arrives, our raw product arrives. Our location actually eliminates the need for 1,500 truck movements for every ship that arrives if we were to take that product off-site and take it elsewhere. We have appropriate separation distances to homes and other sensitive receptors and direct access to the principal freight network. Trucks and traffic are the primary concern that we have heard. We share council and state government's aspiration for cleaner air for residents in the inner west. That's why Steel Cement will invest $1 million a year in full, to pay in full all of our customers' tolls to use the Westgate Tunnel, including toll on and off ramps when they are ready to be used. Combined with truck bans, curfews and new enforcement cameras, there's only one way customers will be able to get to our site, using approved routes on the principal freight network. It's important to bear in mind that the increase in traffic from this development would be less than half of 1%, just around 0.47%, and will result in less trucks sitting at intersections where emissions are higher. I don't have time to address all of the claimed impacts, but instead I'd like to remind you that qualified scientific experts analysed issues like air quality, dust and respirable crystalline silica. The EPA's own independent scientific experts have reviewed and assessed that work. These experts have concluded these issues can be appropriately managed and have seen fit to grant the development licence. Thank you for your time. I commend the officer report and respectfully ask that you vote to grant our application for a planning permit. Thank you.
Standing. So I now call for a councillor to move a motion in regard to agenda item 6.1.
Yep, I'd like to move a motion.
Thanks. Councillor Pereira.
That the City Development Delegated Committee, with respect to planning permit application TP 53-2023-1, issue a notice of refusal to grant the planning permit for use and development of the land for industry, cement processing, where the threshold distance at clause 53.1 is not met, to reduce the statutory car parking requirement, to waive the bicycle parking requirements, and to alter access to a road in transport to zone at 295 and 325 Whitehall Street and 2A Francis Street, Yarraville, on the following grounds. The proposal fails to satisfy the objective and strategies at clause 13.07-1S, land use compatibility of the Maribyrnong planning scheme, and will result in unacceptable adverse off-site impacts. And 2, that the proposal fails to satisfy the purpose of Industrial 1 zone at clause 33.01 and the decision guidelines at clause 33.01-2 of the Maribyrnong planning scheme for the following reasons: the adverse effect of traffic to be generated on roads, and B, the adverse off-site industrial effects at nearby sensitive uses.
Thanks, councillor. Can I call for a councillor to second the motion?
Formally seconded.
Thanks, councillor Yengi. Councillors, are there any questions or points of clarification? No? So would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. I'm speaking against the proposed development at Whitehall Street and Francis Street for several reasons rooted in protecting the health, safety and livability of our community. Firstly, the proposal fails to meet the objectives of the land use compatibility outlined in the planning scheme. It poses adverse off-site impacts, particularly to nearby residents and sensitive land uses in the area, which are unacceptable for a project of this scale and nature. It also adds to traffic congestion on already busy roads, creating safety concerns for all road users. By waiving bicycle parking requirements, the proposal undermines our city's commitment to sustainability and active transport, offering no solutions to support greener, healthier travel options. If workforce is coming from too far afield to warrant an active transport provision, then this demonstrates that the project does not contribute to local jobs. Development in our city should enhance the quality of life for residents and align with our values of safety, sustainability and community well-being. This proposal falls short on all fronts.
Thanks, Councillor. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Sure. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge Steel Cement and Maribyrnong residents for taking the time to attend tonight's meeting and for sharing their views regarding the proposed planning permit. As you all know, in 2021, the Victorian Legislative Council Environment and Planning Committee commissioned a parliamentary inquiry into the health impacts of air pollution in Victoria. There were several consultations undertaken, including the Inner West, culminating in 35 recommendations to the Victorian Government for immediate implementation. The report showed that the Inner West communities, in particular ours, have been exposed to high levels of air pollution, including particulate matter, dust, odour and hazardous air pollution from events such as industrial fires. The report also acknowledges that Maribyrnong has consistently rated poorly in air quality rankings when compared to other suburban areas in Melbourne, with most of this being attributed to old and heavy industrial activity, transport and other sources. In response to this report, it can be concluded that MCC endorsed an air quality improvement plan in 2022, and we also declared a health emergency in 2023, following the endorsement of the plan. This proposed permit seeks to construct an additional plant to allow for the processing and grinding of cement clinker, as well as adding an additional 185 trucks on roads, which would operate 24 hours a day. As our city continues to grow and population density continues to increase, we see more residential developments taking shape. Our air quality will not only be impacted, but we're also anticipating an increase to the urban heat island effect, which leads to higher temperatures and lower air quality. Lastly, Council received 109 objections to the planning permit from residents who are very concerned about the health impacts of an additional operating site in an already congested urban area. It is for these reasons that I'm formally seconding this motion of refusal.
Thanks, Councillor Yimby. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? No? So before we put it to the vote, I'd just like to say a couple of things. I completely support what Councillor Pereira and Councillor Yegi said. They've outlined, I think, very clearly why, in this case, a refusal is warranted. And just to add to what they've said, whilst we understand from the applicant, yes, and we fully support circular economy processes and businesses, we don't support that at the expense of the public health of our community. And I think, in addition to the planning reasons and the air quality reasons why, this is an issue of, I think, environmental justice. And in this case, I think we need to apply both the precautionary principle but also intergenerational equity principle, which are both key principles of environmental justice. 109 applications. The themes were very strong around our residents being concerned about public health, about noise, and about the adverse off-site impacts that they're already experiencing from a whole host of industrial processes. And for an expansion of this size to be added to that, you can hear in the objectors' voices tonight how unbearable they know that will be to their lives, and it will add a lot of difficulty, but also a lot of potential health impacts going in the future. And as the councillor who brought the health emergency declaration to the previous council, that's uppermost in my mind in considering these applications, in addition to the planning scheme regulations and schedules. Thanks. So I'd now like to put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That looks like the motion's carried. Thanks, councillors. CEO, could I ask for someone to help
Yes.
to
Councillor Meredith will now be returning to the room, to the chamber.
I'm not sure if there are people in the gallery, because I can't see anybody, whether anybody needs to leave after that just have a quick
There
pause.
are, some people have left the chamber, Councillor Thomas, and there are 7 people left in the chamber.
Great, thanks, CEO. So now we move to agenda item
Councillor
6.2.
Meredith is just
Planning
taking her
applications. Oh,
Thank you.
oh, sorry. They meant to wait till Councillor Meredith is in. Apologies. Agenda item 6.2, planning application TP 177/2024-1 at 341 to 351 Francis Street, Yarraville, the Bradmill Precinct. And Council has received one request to address the committee on item 6.2. So I invite Joseph Indomenico on behalf of the applicant to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Thomas. Good evening, fellow councillors. My name is Joseph Indomenico and I'm from Tract Consultants. We are the town planners representing Fraser's Property Australia, the landowner and developer of the Bradmill site in Yarraville. I'm joined tonight by Theo Dalabosca from Fraser's as well as Robert Carletti from Tract. Before I briefly talk to our planning application before you all tonight, the Bradmill project team and I would just like to extend our congratulations on becoming elected, as well as council more widely, for its completion of this major renovation of Town Hall and Civic Office. It's an impressive building. We look forward to continuing our strong collaborative work with council over the next term to deliver the final phases of one of Melbourne's and the West's major urban renewal sites. We assume you're all very familiar with the Bradmill Precinct and its background, so given time constraints I won't go through the history, but in case you have not been following more recent construction activity, things are well underway. Major infrastructure in roads and drainage has been completed, as well as the commencement of Stage 1 townhouses. Fraser's has been very active in the community, having hosted community information sessions about the project prior to making the first application. Various activations on site with community and providing regular updates on construction progress and activity to residents immediately surrounding the site. In addition to this, an existing building on site has been repurposed for a multi-purpose sales office and community function space. The building also features a collection of historical artefacts and information about the textile factory, its employees and the function of the site previously. It's a remarkable space and we encourage you each to visit when you've got some time. Onto the application, as set out in the Delegated report, the application seeks approval for an 8-storey apartment building by preeminent architectural practice Hayball. It's located within the approved but yet to be commenced neighbourhood activity centre within the broader Bradmill precinct. This application marks the 5th major planning application that's come before council following Fraser's acquisition of the site a little over 3 years ago. The recommendation before council tonight is to issue a planning permit, and it's the result of an extensive and highly collaborative process with various council departments. It goes without saying that we're very grateful for the time that the officers have put into this application and the recommendation before council tonight. Should council resolve to approve the application, it will give effect to 149 new homes, a cafe on ground, as well as a new public accessible town square known as the Arbory that integrates with the already approved neighbourhood activity centre on site. At a high level, the project adopts, or this application rather, adopts a form and scale and design language that entirely aligns with the development plan that applies to the site. It's a very high performing building in terms of internal amenity and ESD. Materials selected are robust and genuine, and the facade composition is orderly and very efficient. We thank council again for processing this application, and we request that the recommendation made by the officers is accepted in full and will be available for any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Joseph. So I now call for a councillor to move a motion in regard to agenda item 6.2. Councillor Yinke?
Do we have the opportunity to ask questions?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, after the motion's moved and seconded, then we'll go to councillor questions. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Yinke.
Formally move.
Can you read out the,
sorry.
recommendation for us?
Okay. Sorry, happy to read it out. I formally move that the City Development Delegated Committee issue a planning permit for use of the land for dwellings in a Commercial 1 zone, construction of a building or construct or carry out works in a Commercial 1 zone, construction of a building or construct or carry out works in a Special Building Overlay, construction of a building or construct or carry out works in a Heritage Overlay, reduce the number of car parking spaces required under clause 52.06 at 341 to 359 Francis Street, Yarraville, subject to conditions contained in attachment 1. Note the delegation of the Manager City Development to settle any matter before the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal which may arise as a result of the issuing of this planning permit.
Thanks, Councillor. A call for a councillor to second the motion.
Formally second.
Thanks, Councillor Meredith. So now, councillors, are there any questions or points of clarification?
Yeah, I have some questions.
Okay.
I have some concerns regarding the increase in the building height to 8 stories. However, I presume the height has facilitated an increase in green space between the commercial buildings and the apartment. How much space has been allocated as a result of the redistribution?
So I'm not sure if Damien, I'm sorry, if Joseph is still there. Joseph, are you happy to respond to that?
I think an officer could
Or an officer
respond
to do that?
to the application.
The Director of Environment and Planning.
Thanks, Councillor Pereira. And through you, Chair, just conferring with Ashley Manini, who's the Manager of City Development at the moment. We'd have to take that question on notice. We don't know the answer to that.
Okay. And does the 8 stories match the height or exceed the existing heritage warehouse buildings and tower to the southern end of the precinct?
Mr Minetti?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I can confirm that it would extend above the height of those heritage buildings to the south.
And
Another question?
yeah.
Okay, keep going.
Housing affordability is a serious issue in the area, and despite this, all apartments have been allocated a car space. Parking provision comes with a significant price tag, and once purchased and built, it's very inflexible space, thus promoting car ownership. Residents in the area are already experiencing traffic congestion and pollution. This will be exacerbated by the traffic from the Bradmill site. There's only provision for 1 bike space per apartment. How does the project address multi-bike households?
Wondering if maybe can the Director or the Manager answer that question?
Thank you, Councillor, and through the Chair. The planning permit application does comply with clause 5206 of the Maribyrnong Planning Scheme, which is in relation to car parking. It just exceeds the rates for car parking. Council obviously can consider an application should one be before it that seeks to reduce the car parking requirements, but in this instance it does comply. And clause 5234, which is regarding bicycle parking, the application significantly exceeds those requirements.
And in the bike parking facilities, is there provision for charging of e-scooters and bikes, and what safety provisions have been provided?
Again, if Ashley, you could answer that question.
Thank you, Councillor, and through the Chair again. There are spaces obviously for charging, probably not enough for every single person or every single bicycle there, but there are certainly charging points within the bicycle storage area. In terms of the safety for charging, that would be ultimately something that the Owners Corporation would need to deal with once the development is constructed and occupied.
And would the developer consider for this development or for future developments provision for more affordability by offering purchasers the choice to buy a dwelling with a car space or without?
Just wondering if we are able to ask the applicant to respond to that one.
Well, we don't usually have discussion in these meetings. We could perhaps take that on notice and come back to the councillor.
Okay, all right, thank you. Councillor Pereira, is that all of you? Have you any other questions?
I have another one about Francis Street and the median strip, the redesign of that road reserve, and whether there's been consideration to accommodate active transport infrastructure.
So would that be the Director of Infrastructure Services or
He
the
may need to
Planning
take
Manager?
it on notice, but I'll just hand to Patrick Jess, Director Infrastructure. Through you, the Chair.
Thank you. Through the Chair. I'm not sure that makes part of the planning application, but I can confirm that our Engineering and Transport Department has been working closely with Fraser's Development on the design of this, and there is, I'm referring to what I think you are, shared path connections as part of that.
Thank you.
And I think Mr Manetti, our Manager of Development, has a further comment.
Thank you, CEO. Just answering Councillor Pereira's question from earlier regarding the amount of open space. So the Arbory, which is directly to the northwest of the proposed building, is around 2,000 square metres, and that's additional public space. If you refer to proposed condition 16 of tonight's recommendation, that does require that the Arbory area or that open space be open to the public 24/7 and is not restricted by fencing or otherwise.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or points of clarification, councillors? No? So I would now like to put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Now we move on to councillor question time, which is managed in accordance with our council's governance rules and is limited to 15 minutes unless councillors consent to an extension. So, councillors, are there any questions? No? Declare councillor question time closed. Moving on to urgent business. Councillors, are there any items of urgent business? No? I declare urgent business closed. And just before we move to close the meeting, because this is our last council meeting or delegated meeting, committee meeting for the year, I really would just like to give a big thanks to our CEO and her executive team and all the staff for their hard work this year. As we saw at last night's council meeting, even just for Q1, there's been an extraordinary amount of work done, and I know for the previous rest of the year, there was also an extraordinary amount of work done across all of our services, across all of our strategic work, across planning, infrastructure, community service, and also the internal work of the governance teams as well. So thank you everybody for all your work, and I know that the former councillors would also be wanting to thank you, the councillors in the former council term would be wanting to thank you as well if they were here tonight. Also a big thanks to the community for everything that they do. Maribyrnong is a really wonderful place to live, and that is in no small way because of the community that we have and the way they get engaged in not just council engagement processes but in their own consultations and setting up groups, advocacy groups, action groups and the like. And so I just want to, yes, a big shout out to the community. And also, this is our last meeting for the year. We'll resume meetings in February 2025. So I just want to wish everyone a happy Christmas, if that's how you celebrate, a happy festive season and a happy new year, and wish you all the best for 2025. So I now declare the meeting closed at 7:18 p.m.